A fierce swarm of drones swept over Russia's Baltic coast in the dead of night, striking one of Moscow's most secretive oil export hubs. Fires broke out, smoke rose over the Primorsk terminal, and inside the Kremlin's command centers, panic rippled through the air defense nets. This was no random raid. This was a calculated blow to Russia's war machine. This past weekend, on the night of September 12, 2025, the Ukrainian side reportedly launched a massive drone strike targeting Russia's oil export infrastructure. An assault that struck the Primorsk oil loading terminal on the Baltic Sea, heavily damaged 2 tankers, and ignited fires in pumping stations. Russian sources claim their air defenses shot down 221 Ukrainian drones nationwide during the operation. Yet satellite imagery and independent industry sources suggest that despite the defensive claims, significant damage occurred at Primorsk, forcing a partial suspension of operations and disruptions to Russia's oil export schedule. Within days, port sources and Reuters reporting confirmed that Primorsk resumed partial loading operations, albeit at reduced capacity as repairs were underway. To make up for the inconvenience in Primorsk, Russia has reportedly moved extra export volumes to other terminals in the Baltic and Black Sea, including Novorossiysk and Ust-Luga. The Primorsk facility is essential to Russia's shadow fleet strategy, which involves a secret network of older tankers operating under switched-off identification systems or changing flags to facilitate oil exports while evading Western sanctions. Instead of only hitting ships at sea, Kiev sought to cut off the vital links in Russia's crude export network, which is why observers saw the Ukrainian strike as a well-thought-out military and commercial ploy. Deep within Russia, another drone strike took place almost simultaneously. The Bashneft-Novoil Ufa refinery in Bashkortostan, which is about 1,400 kilometers from the front lines in Ukraine, was apparently hit by drones on September 13th. Local officials said one drone crashed into the plant, another was shot down, and a fire broke out, but there were no casualties and only minor damage. Ukrainian Military Intelligence, GUR, claimed responsibility, stating the refinery was targeted to disrupt Russia's oil processing capacity. It's unclear if the harm will result in longer-term consequences or production bottlenecks for refined fuel. With their combination of economic warfare, deception operations, and deep penetration into Russian territory, these twin attacks on Primorsk and Ufa represent one of the most aggressive dual-front drone efforts to date in this conflict. We must examine how these strikes allegedly transpired and why they are significant in order to completely understand the ramifications. A multi-layered drone attack is described in reports and an open-source reconstruction. One distinguishing feature is the abundance of low-cost bait drones, which are intended to draw attention away from the actual strike drones by triggering radar and air defense reactions. A more advanced batch of kamikaze drones, including some long-range models with weapons, allegedly managed to get through the openings created by the decoys. Drone-mounted electronic warfare units escorts allegedly jammed radar and disrupted tracking systems to help the strike drones evade interception. In the case of Primorsk, 2 old tankers moored at the pier, identified in public reconstructions as Cousteau and Cayune, were hit. One drone reportedly struck below the bridge, disabling electronics. Another impacted a cargo tank, igniting a blaze. Simultaneously, infrastructure on shore, pumping stations, loading arms, and control centers, was struck to sever the port's operational backbone. Because of the ensuing fires and structural damage, loading operations were halted and portions of the port were rendered unusable. Why would Ukraine take such a daring step? The importance of oil to Russia's war economy holds the key to the solution. Moscow has historically relied on oil revenue to fund state operations, military purchases, and logistics despite sanctions. There can be serious financial consequences if the flow of oil is disrupted, particularly through illegal freight channels. Millions of barrels are handled daily at the Primorsk terminal alone, which is thought to produce $10 to $15 billion in export value yearly. Furthermore, hitting several nodes puts additional strain on Russia's distribution and refining networks, including refineries like the Ufa complex in addition to tankers. If crude cannot be loaded or processed, downstream fuel shortages and export constraints could emerge. Already, in the wake of prior strikes, audits, and energy analysts note that Russian refining capacity has taken repeated hits, contributing to rising regional fuel stress. From a strategic lens, these attacks also test Russia's air defense systems. Even layered modern networks like S-400, Pantsir, and radar arrays have shown vulnerabilities when overwhelmed or spoofed. Every successful breach undermines Ukraine's belief that Russia is impregnable and emphasizes that no port, pipeline, or refinery in Russia is actually inaccessible. It is crucial to emphasize that a lot of the striking technical details, such as particular drone kinds, jammer escorts, and exact strike sequences, are still hypothetical or rebuilt using open data and defense analysis models. They should be handled cautiously rather than with certainty, because they cannot be independently verified in every way. The consequences of this operation are already having an impact on defense planning, diplomacy, and the energy markets. Due to capacity limitations and pipeline congestion, Russia has hurried to redirect export volumes to other ports. Experts caution that persistent Ukrainian pressure on Russia's energy infrastructure may limit the Kremlin's options both militarily and economically. But Russia retains considerable resources and reserves. How much this will erode its war effort is uncertain. In military terms, drones have become a central tool in asymmetric warfare. Strikes deep into Russian territory force defense planners to allocate scarce resources to guard vast perimeters. They raise the bar for air defense coverage, command and control resilience, and threat identification under saturation attacks. For Ukraine, success or failure here could influence future campaigns and deterrence in contested zones. On the diplomatic stage, these attacks escalate pressure on Europe and the West. How to respond when energy infrastructure becomes a weapon? Several European ports and navies have already intercepted or boarded suspected shadow fleet tankers linked to Russian evasion schemes. The interplay between sanctions, maritime action, and covert logistics will intensify. Finally, to Russia's leadership, the strike at Primorsk is not just a tactical wound, it is a symbolic hit to the image of invincibility. Even in the face of 221 claimed intercepts, the drones got through, and they delivered their payloads. The question now is how Moscow responds, whether with retaliation, renewed fortification, doctrinal changes, or energy clampdowns. And for Kyiv, whether this marks a turning point in crippling the financial engine of the Kremlin. In summary, the coordinated drone attacks on Primorsk and Ufa blend economic warfare with tactical ingenuity. They reveal both the reach of Ukrainian strike capabilities and the exposure in Russia's energy war machine. The full consequences, operational, strategic, political, will play out in the weeks and months ahead.